With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
This is Wheel Bearings. I'm Dan Roth from Forbes.
I'm Rebecca Linland from Rebecca Drives.
And I'm Sam Abu-Al-Samad from Guidehouse Insights.
Well, that's the best ever so far. All right.
162 episodes in, we finally got it right.
Yeah. Perfect. All right, so let's talk about what we're driving, and I'll just go from the top of our rundown here. Sam, you had the 2020 Chevrolet Silverado diesel. That's their small diesel, right?
Yes, this is the new diesel that they announced when they initially announced the Silverado at the 2018 Detroit Auto Show. One of the things that they announced at the time was that it would be coming with a diesel finally for the first time in light duty trucks. They've obviously had diesels in their heavy duty versions for a long time. And in fact, there was a plan back a decade ago to put a diesel engine in the light duty Silverado and GMC Sierra. It was a 4.5 liter V8 diesel that was, I had seen it, I'd seen prototypes of it. It was really neatly packaged to fit within the same package envelope as a standard gasoline small block V8, although it shared no componentry with that engine. And they were so far along in the process that, they had a plant all tooled up, ready to build these things. And then in early 2009, as they were heading into bankruptcy, and the market was collapsing, they canceled the program. And I was told a couple of years later, by somebody at GM that, they had actually mothballed all the equipment. It was sitting in a warehouse. And, if they felt that the market would come back, they could potentially revive it. They never did. But it would be, it took, another almost 10 years before they finally got around to bringing a diesel to the light duty pickup trucks. And this time around, they did a 6-cylinder like Ford and FCA have done in their light duty trucks, but they didn't do a V6. They did an inline 6. And, I talked to Dan Nicholson at the time, a couple of years ago, said, why'd you guys pick an inline instead of a V6? And he said, well, we had the packaging space available in the big pickup trucks. There was plenty of room for an inline 6. And we felt, the inline 6 would, provide a lot more refinement. It would be much smoother operating than a V6. And, oh man, was he right. I mean, this is the smoothest running, one of the smoothest running engines I've ever driven of any kind, but certainly the smoothest V6 or smoothest diesel engine I've ever driven. It felt like no vibration at all, very quiet, very slick, really quite powerful. It's a really impressive engine, and it's they obviously only going in the full size pickups, but also now into the new full size SUVs. So they're putting it in the Tahoe and Suburban and the Yukon and the new Escalade as well. And when it finally arrived, let me get back to the right tab here. The EPA ratings on this thing are 23 miles per gallon city, 25 combined, 29 highway for the 4-wheel drive. The rear wheel drive, if you get the rear wheel drive, it's actually, I think, 30 or 31 highway. So this is an incredibly, impressive engine. If you need a full size pickup truck and you want to do towing and you're going to be towing a lot, not if you're just towing, 2 or 3 times a year, it's probably not worth the investment in a diesel engine, because it's a fairly pricey option package.
Right. That was what I was going to say. What are you spending to get that engine?
So
is it 10,000?
No, it's $2,500.
Oh, that's actually cheap for the engine. That's it.
Yeah.
Does it
Make that up in
require?
fuel economy pretty quickly.
Well, if you're towing, yes, you will.
Yeah.
Because compared to towing with a V8 engine, you're going to be when with a gas engine, your fuel economy when you're towing is going to drop off a lot more dramatically.
Right.
I didn't get a chance to do any towing with this one, but I have towed with other diesel trucks, and I've hauled heavy payloads, and I've seen the difference in fuel economy. There's a lot less degradation in fuel economy when you're towing with a diesel than with a gas engine, because they just work best under load. So the total price of this particular truck, this was an LTZ crew cab 4-wheel drive. The base MSRP was $48,700, which is, again, not inexpensive, but it's right in the ballpark of average transaction prices on new vehicles or new trucks these days. And then this one had the premium package with leather and all kinds of other goodies in there, which was $6,700.
Is that so? That's, I guess, part of my question is some of that stuff required together with the diesel. So the diesel itself is cheap, but it also makes you buy, the different transmission or something, so that the total cost rises. Like if I guess we go to the build tool and add it and see if it requires other additions. But yeah, and anyway, carry on.
I would answer that question. I think that on some of the lower trim levels, I think it is higher priced package. I think it's like $4,000 on some of the lower trim options or trim levels. And I would answer the question more specifically, except my keyboard is giving me fits again.
No, that's all right.
But
we'll leave that up to you, dear listener.
Yeah. But all in, this one came to $61,720, including the $1,500 delivery charge.
That's actually surprisingly not that terrible. I mean, it's a lot for a 1,500 pickup, but I had a Ram 1,500 that was like 70. So
yeah, it's, as I said, average transaction prices on these full size trucks now, are in the $50,000 ballpark. So this is a little bit above average. But this one was also pretty well loaded up. That premium package I mentioned for $6,700. That includes things like, leather interior, power sliding rear window with a defogger, power up down tailgate, heated second row seats, the latest generation of their infotainment system. And funny thing is, it says it's an 8-inch touchscreen in there, but in this massive truck, an 8-inch screen just feels so tiny. When I got in, I looked at that screen compared to the 10-inch screen that was in the CT5 I had the week before. That 8-inch screen feels so small in this massive truck.
There's phones that I feel like are 8-inch screens.
Yeah.
They're getting there. I mean, there's definitely phones in the 6.5 to almost 7-inch.
Yeah,
I think the new Samsung Note 20 Ultra is like 6.8 inches now or something like that.
Don't encourage them.
Yeah,
it was great to see. Here's our take. It was great to see a small screen. Thank you for having restraint so that we don't have a giant unresponsive LCD to stab our finger at.
Or there are phones that size.
Right.
So anyway, and then this one also had things like the spray and bed liner. That was part of the Z71 off-road package. So that's another thing that added another $1,600 on here. I think the thing that I actually appreciated the most, besides the engine, was the technology package, which $2,100. That includes the surround vision system, with HD surround vision system with trailer camera.
Yeah, that's like surprisingly necessary on these all of these trucks, because you can't maneuver them because you can't see.
Exactly. And also, this one had the rear camera mirror that we talked about last time on this, that was on the CT5, which on these big trucks, because they ride up so high, that rear camera mirror actually is another really important feature to have, because you can actually see what's behind you. You have much better visibility to what's around you with that than you do with a standard optical mirror.
Yes. So I had that, the first time I had that camera was on the launch of the GMC Sierra. And I absolutely loved that camera. It's really cool. I mean, some people some people's had issues getting adjusted to it and getting used to it. But once mine was on, I just kept mine on the whole time. And it's probably weird if you can't see people in the back seat because you're not seeing the inside of your car anymore. You're actually just you're seeing the exterior right onto the road.
Exactly.
But I mean, I thought it was just absolutely fantastic. And it's so easy to switch back and forth too, which is the other thing.
Yeah,
that
you
I
just
love
flip the tab like you normally would, for, when you're dimming.
Like day night. Remember when we had to do day night?
Yeah. And, although in this case, it goes between the camera view and the optical view.
Right. And I think it's just such a great feature. So Sam, do you think that GMC will eventually get a diesel?
Oh yeah. You can get it in the Sierra.
Oh, you can get it in both. Okay, I'm sorry.
So they're putting it.
I didn't know if they were differentiating.
No, they're putting it in all the light duty, full size pickups and SUVs.
Okay, because I was thinking of the tailgate, which they're only keeping in the GMC, the
multi-pro Swiss Army knife.
Multi-pro, yes, yeah. that thing, that they are not putting into anything except GMC right now.
Yeah, no, the diesel is available across the board.
Okay, cool.
So that is a good thing.
Yes.
And like I say, if you're going to be towing on a regular basis, I highly recommend it. I mean, they expect, I haven't talked recently to the Chevrolet folks about it, but, talking to the Ford and, FCA people in the past, they expect that the main market for the diesel engine, it's going to be a small percentage, single digit percentage of sales. But when you're talking about vehicles that sell, 500,000 plus a year, I mean, you're still talking 30 to 50,000 vehicles a year. So they expect that the primary customers for this are people that are towing horse trailers or, people that are using it for commercial purposes, like landscapers, that are towing a trailer full of, with their big lawn tractors and lawn mowers and all their other equipment, towing those on a daily basis. Because for those people, that operating cost advantage that you get from the diesel in that application, it so overwhelms the upfront cost premium that it makes a lot more economic sense for them to use a diesel in that case. So I think that if your use case is the right use case for a diesel, this is definitely one to consider. And I said this is the most refined diesel I've ever driven, both in terms of noise, but vibration. That inline six is so smooth running. It's got plenty of performance, and it's quite fuel efficient. In my week of driving, I averaged about 24 miles per gallon, which was mostly city driving, and it was good.
Yeah, so I guess especially this year, towing has become a lot more on the forefront of everybody's imagination. RV sales are through the roof. Nobody has any inventory because, the current situation. I'm gesturing around. Nobody can see me, but everything means like if you have to go to another state and if you want to go actually try to have a vacation or something, you've got to do a lot of times you got to quarantine. So you tow your accommodations with you, you can actually go and have a vacation while you quarantine, especially because who can afford to spend 2 weeks in a place before you sort of turn around? And so towing is actually a lot more sort of on everybody's mind, I think, this year than it has been in the past. And you start to look at the tow ratings of the 1500s, and they're good, but you also start to compare some of those RVs, and they get heavy. So, you've got to calculate like, okay, well, what's the dry weight? What's it going to weigh when I put all my stuff in it and in the truck? And if I fill up have the propane tanks, the freshwater tank and stuff all topped off and everything, it gets to be heavy pretty quickly. And you can get yourself a nice, if you've got a family, you want to get something that's like 25 to 30 something feet. That's not small. And so you want to be able to confidently tow that, and all of the half-ton pickups will do it. It's nice to have that edge with the power and the sort of confidence that you're going to have the power and torque and fuel economy with the diesel. And this one doesn't sound all that expensive. So there's other light-duty diesels, but I'm sure they're all price competitive. You can get into the comparison, but I'm actually surprised that this isn't terrible, because 61 isn't completely bonkers for a truck like that? I mean, it's bonkers, but it's not the most nutty I've seen. So
Yeah.
Yeah, what is its do you know off the top of your head or have in front of you the sort of max towing and max payload? I know there's a lot of options. Like it usually you have to play the game with.
Depends a lot on the specific configuration. I mean,
right.
It kind of depends. If you get short bed, long bed, 4-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive,
which axle, which rear end ratio or final drive. Ratio. Yeah.
So I don't. It's lots.
Yeah, it's got to be over 10,000. My assumption is it's like 12 or 13,000, if not more, pounds of trailering. Because I know the gas engine ones will get up there, like with the V8. If you were to get, let's see, a Silverado 1500 with the right axle, you could probably do 10 or 11,000 pounds, maybe more now. They're all duking it out, so they some silly number.
So let's see, a crew cab. 4-wheel drive with the short bed, the 5 foot 8 inch bed, will tow 9,300 pounds. With the long bed, it's 9,200 pounds. 2-wheel drive, that drops to about 7,500 pounds.
Oh, really? It does less with 2-wheel drive with the diesel?
Yeah, and that's actually it's the same thing is true with the gas engines as well. They tow less with 2-wheel drive typically than they do with 4-wheel drive.
Weird. That used to be different. It used to be you'd get the 2-wheel drive with the biggest engine and it would have the highest tow rating. Like the 2-wheel drive with the biggest engine, smallest cab, and it would have the highest tow rating.
Well, the payloads go up, with 2-wheel drive versus 4-wheel drive, but they so the max payload, let's see. They don't actually the payloads are not broken out by engine, just by the configuration. So you get about max payloads about 2,100 pounds for a 2-wheel drive short bed. 4-wheel drive 2,170. So about 2,100 pounds of payload. So about a ton of payload and about 9,000, 9,300 pounds of tow rating for the diesel.
Bunch of corn-fed Americans in there with their stuff in the bed and their Airstream on the back.
Yeah, I mean, if you actually need the maximum tow rating, the 6.2 liter gas V8 is the top one in the GM lineup. That's 12,000 pounds.
That surprises me.
But you're going to use a lot more fuel to tow that. And even if you're towing 9,000 pounds with the gas V8, it's going to use a lot more fuel than that diesel is.
Well, that's why it has a higher tow rating, right? It gets lighter as it goes really quickly because it's sucking the tank dry.
Yep. There you go.
So it's interesting that you said it's like one of the smoothest inline sixes you've experienced. Like diesels typically have the little bit of clatter, and like any diesel, no matter what the layout of the engine is, you can sort of typically count on them to be a little bit more noisy and a little bit more vibration than a gas engine, but that's not so here. They've tamed that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of noise dampening materials under the hood and around this engine, so that helps. So it doesn't really sound much like a diesel. It's got that diesel growl to it, but it doesn't have a whole lot of clatter. So it's quite quiet, which is it's a very pleasant truck to drive.
That's one of the things I love about the GM trucks is that they're quiet.
Yeah, and the last Silverado I drove was a Trail Boss. It was a 5.3 liter V8 Trail Boss. Yep. And that one, I think I averaged about 14 miles per gallon with it. I was very unimpressed.
That's a good truck, though.
It is, but the Trail Boss is designed for, that one's set up more for off-road, and the whole suspension was a little softer, more compliant, and the thing kind of moved around a lot more. It didn't feel as buttoned down or controlled as this one did. This one was a lot better to drive on the road. I suspect, that I would appreciate the suspension tuning of the Trail Boss, if I was actually out on a trail somewhere, but most people don't drive full-size trucks out there. So I personally wouldn't recommend that that configuration unless that's what you want. But this one, I think was much better buttoned down, and also the interior felt better than in that Trail Boss. Obviously with the premium package, that $6,700 premium package, it was more leather and soft touch materials across the dashboard and the door and everything. So it didn't feel quite as cheap as the interior in that Trail Boss did. So I think this one is definitely a more pleasant place to spend time, especially when you're up above $50,000. This one, it was not quite up to the standards of a Ram, but it was approaching that.
All right. So you're gonna buy one with your own money when you need a truck? No, you're just gonna borrow one.
My philosophy is a truck is a great thing to be able to borrow. I mean, right. I personally don't have a use case that would justify owning a pickup truck of either small or large, on a full-time basis. It makes no sense for me. So I have no reason to buy one. But if I did need one, I would certainly give this one some consideration. I
run into those situations where I'm going to buy a truck out of frustration because it's just one of those things where like.
That's an excellent reason to purchase a vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's the same reason why people they'll buy a car, decide they don't like it after like a couple of weeks, and then like return it and buy another one. You just cost yourself money.
Oh my gosh!
But I always run into these situations where where a truck would be handy, and I'm just like I do it to myself, and I just like swear at myself. Anyway. So yeah, what did you have, Rebecca?
So it's funny. I had the two, what I feel is sort of the two extremes of the Toyota Lexus brand, because I had the Toyota CHR, which starts at about $21,000.
I love that thing.
And then back to back, I had the 2021 Lexus LC500 Convertible, which starts at like $92,000. So I spanned the gamut of Toyota Lexus offerings in the US. And, they were both appealing and oh, I'm sorry. Did we just hear Alexa speaking?
A little bit, yeah. That's okay.
Probably.
Sorry about that. So yes, yeah, that's very true. So it was really interesting to have these vehicles, and as I said, they were back to back. So they picked up the Toyota CHR, and they dropped off the LC500. So I have a little bit of a soft spot for the Toyota CHR, which is a small. It's sort of a mock crossover, because it's really right. It's a glorified car, but it's actually the very first review that appered on my Rebecca Drive site.
So go find it, Rebecca Drive.
So yeah,
type into Google C/HR site RebeccaDrives.com and it'll come up.
So I called it a mock crossover in that review, and I think that's a really good description of it. I remember talking soon after it had come out back in 2018. I remember being in Manhattan, of all places. I had to do something for ABC News, and we were actually doing it at a Toyota dealership. And I was early for once. And so I was talking to the dealer, and he actually said that people love it. It's great for an urban environment. However, in New York, in particular, it only comes in front-wheel drive. Let me rephrase that.
In North America, it only comes in all.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Let me rephrase that because it was not clear. The vehicle is only available in front-wheel drive. That was particularly problematic, he said, for when people would come in and want to look at it because it's such a great size, but everyone wants all-wheel drive, especially in places like New York where it snows, obviously.
Right.
So I think
the answer, like, well, you don't actually need it, is not going to fly when you're trying to actually sell cars.
No, it's not. And, and that's the thing is that people they expect it. We've trained them to want all-wheel drive, even though front-wheel drive has been more than sufficient in many cases, and certainly in a place like New York in some ways, of all places, where you don't really need a car at all. But that's a whole other discussion.
That's true.
So, and of course, snow tires are an option, but snow tires are, $800 to $1,000. And when you're looking at a price point in the 20s, you're not likely to spring for, $1,000 of equipment that you feel like your car should come with. So this one, it has a 2.0 liter 4-cylinder engine. It was definitely whiny, that CVT. It's only got 144 horsepower. So, and you feel it sometimes. I mean, there's cars with less, obviously, but the acceleration was okay in most instances. It's just when you're going like up hills, when you really need it, it's not always there. And it's a shame because it looks like such a fun little vehicle. I mean, it's definitely eye-catching. People want to know what it is because they don't see it very often. And, there's a lot of good things about it. I love the size of it. There's good flexibility with it. The back seats go down, so there's some, healthy amount of cargo room. The rear doors have this weird handle, which
I love that handle. It took me like 5 minutes to find it. First time I was like, where is it?
So I had some groceries in the back. I was at my sister's house and she's like, oh, I'll run out and grab the rest of them. And I had to go out. I'm like, are you okay? She goes, where's the handle? Yeah. It's like, it took me a little while.
But once you find it, like, especially if you have something in your hand, because it's up on the pillar and you pull it out towards you, it's actually like handier than the normal like flappy handle.
So I didn't think so. It's so funny. No? I said the exact opposite because I feel like if you've got something it depends on what you're carrying, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got something, substantial in your hands that you're supporting with both hands, that kind of like waist level door that a lot of handles are, or sort of you've got your arm at 45-degree angle, you can pull out a typical door handle. Yeah. This one you actually have to reach up, you have to elevate your arm through your shoulder and then pull out. So it can be that's true. Quite awkward.
And when you've got your arms full of that false graph vintage pattern, you don't want to drop it. You got to pick it up to get the handle. I got it.
Do you guys remember the...
You are good, man.
Do you guys remember the Chevy Beretta?
Yes.
And the
it had the little flappies. It had the flappies inside. They were like hidden.
Well, right? on the B pillar, they had that similar kind of flappy door handle. You grab it and pull it towards you.
And I'm sure with the W body, that was like a cable that would stretch and stop working after a while.
Probably, yeah.
Those cars were such. Yes. Every time somebody gets fancy with the door handles, people suffer. But the CHR. So I agree. I was really charmed by it when I had it, but mostly because its chassis tuning is pretty good.
Yes.
And it was actually surprisingly fun to drive. It is definitely down on power, and the lack of all-wheel drive was something that I flagged too. But the thing that's like the most annoying about it is they make a turbo version, they make a hybrid, they make an all-wheel drive version. They just don't bring them here.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is that, and I agree, Dan, I was completely charmed by it. I liked it a lot better the second time, I have to say. It was just, I don't really know why. I just remember thinking, you know what, this was a lot more fun. And maybe it was just, I was in a better mindset or something. I don't know.
You're in a good mood that day.
I was in a better place in my life, although I'm not. But so some of the fit and finish.
And maybe the bar has been lowered so much. Yeah.
Right, like, the sun is out today. I guess I'm alive.
Distinctly possible.
At least here in Michigan, the sky was blue yesterday, not red.
It was a spectacular day yesterday. Yes, and we are definitely thinking of all our friends and colleagues out west.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Rebecca.
No, you're okay, because it's true. And the ironic part is that this car was very much like an orangey, fiery red that would probably blend right in up there these days.
Did it have the two-tone roof, the white roof? I love that they do
No,
that.
it had a black roof. I love that two-tone.
Yeah, they have, and they have like the color choices too. They can get like the teal with the white roof, and the
Yes,
red with
yes.
the
No,
white.
it's
It looks
the
good.
two-tone is really, really awesome. This one had a black. I love the white. The
Yeah.
white roof is super fun. So, the interior is definitely heavy on the hard plastics and the piano black. It's all black, which we've talked about before. Can really it actually, I feel like it shows a lot of flaws, which is the opposite of what black does on a body. But in here, it does show quite a few flaws. It had Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and the Android Auto worked really, really well for me. It doesn't come with any other system, which is fine. It had a good place for my phone, so ergonomically, it worked out well. The steering wheel's pretty busy, but they're well placed, unlike things that we've talked about before. So overall, I think that it's a good little vehicle. Now, I will say that at the end of the day, I had the Limited, which is the top of the line, and delivered. It was $28,435. There's
Starts to
this class of vehicle. There are so many choices that I struggle to not recommend other vehicles like the Mazda CX-30, which is, I think, a little probably not as well.
That's what I was just going to ask you, how you would compare this against the CX-30.
I mean, I would probably have to go for the CX-30 instead. Frankly, I think that it has all-wheel drive available,
a lot more power. The interior of that CX-30 is really lovely. So yes, I mean, I think that this is one of the challenges that they've got with the with the CHR, in that there's just a tremendous amount of competition. Now, some people are true, Toyota files, and they're never going to buy anything else. And maybe this, I will say that this suits many different lifestyles, many different life stages. It's easy to get in and out of. It does have cargo room when you need it, but you're not driving around. I don't feel like I'm driving around a lot of extra baggage when I don't have the car full. So, again, there's always that kind of balance between how much room do you need, how much room, do you want to carry on a daily basis, and figuring that out. So I think that, the bottom line to me is just that there's so much competition out there that it's hard to say this is the best car in that class, because I don't think it is, but it certainly is one of the more stylish ones. I will say that. So from a styling standpoint, this is a head turner, and in a really fun way. Not like in a what the hell are you driving kind of way, but it's a fun, happy car. So it has a lot of personality. So if that's what you're going for, I think that this is really fun. The other one, I haven't driven the Nissan Rogue Sport yet. I had that one a couple of months ago.
Okay. So, there's a lot of choices out there, but this one's definitely worth a test drive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we've talked about this, previously when talking about some of these small crossovers. What we've seen in the market over the last year and a half or so is kind of this splitting of that small segment, that kind of B segment, B to C segment crossover, with, slightly more premium ones and then cheaper ones, or more affordable ones. And, so, on the more affordable side, in some cases, some brands have, multiple choices, in that same size class, like Hyundai and Nissan. Hyundai has the Venue and the Kona, which are both, similar sized vehicles, but have very different characters to them. Similarly, Nissan's got the Rogue Sport and the Kicks, and the Rogue Sport and the Kona, are priced, a little bit higher, like basically where the CHR is priced, or the CX-30, but, they offer you a little more. They have, a little bit nicer interiors, they're a little, little bit, I think a little bit better quality feeling. Whereas, then you get the more affordable ones that are similar price, but for a lower price point, you're giving up some of that stuff. You're getting the hard plastics. But I think that's a reasonable trade-off, to get something that's, a new vehicle with a warranty that's more affordable. And I think that the problem for Toyota is the CHR needs to be priced against the Kicks and the Venue rather than the Rogue Sport and the Kona and the CX-30.
Yeah, no, I think that's super valid. I mean, I'm just pulling up the CX-30 and it's the one that I drove on the launch was 28,200. So it's actually less. And that had all-wheel drive with it. I mean, and that interior that we've talked about a lot from Mazda,
much better.
And it's got 40 more horsepower to it. And that makes a huge difference. As you said earlier, Sam, that power, 186 horsepower, 2.5 liter 4-cylinder on that Mazda CX-30, you are going to notice that. Now, the exterior wise, the CX-30 is much more understated. It's a great looking vehicle. It's very handsome, but it doesn't have that character. So if that's more your jam, then you gravitate towards the CHR for something a little funkier, a little bit more fun. But for if you're talking about just vehicle to vehicle and spec to spec, I think the CX-30 is a much better deal. And what's interesting, Sam, is that those vehicles that you talked about, things like the Hyundai Venue, those have come out after the CHR. And, and that price point was probably completely valid. It's actually increased because when I wrote my review on the 2018, it maxed out at 26,000 and now it maxes out at 28,000. So there's definitely some significant price increase, 10%, probably with the addition of some of the safety features as well. Cause this one did have, things that you wanted like lane departure warning and blind spot and such.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's one of the things that Toyota does. Everything has TSSP.
Right.
On it, the safety
but
sense plus, so.
It's
but
included,
so does everybody else now.
Yeah.
It's included, but you're paying for it.
Yeah, of course. They say it's included. It's rolled in. So the thing that and I walked away, I guess it was a couple of years ago now when I had the CHR, it was one of those things it's charming, but it's hard to make a case for it against the field. And that now the field has expanded even more. The Kona and the Venue are going to feel more refined. You're right. It does feel cheap inside. And it has drawbacks. Visibility to the rear isn't good because of the styling.
Especially the rear 3/4.
Yeah, you have to depend upon that rear view camera.
Right,
absolutely.
And if you're sitting in the rear seat, did you try sitting in the rear seat?
It comes up to your earlobe.
It's like sitting in a coffin. It's terrible. It's a bad experience for rear seat passengers.
Yeah. But
it's roomy enough.
Also,
but,
it is. It's got some room. I was impressed with the cargo capability, but then you compare it to the other things, and you do lose out for the styling. It actually outside, it kind of takes up a lot of space. It's compact, but compact in name only. Yeah. And then because of the deeply sculpted body sides, you don't have as much interior room as you might think, and so compare those specs a little bit. But it's a friendly offering in the class, and it's sort of like classic Toyota, right? Like they are in a segment and they're like, well, we're not the best, but we have a really good reputation.
Well, the thing is, this vehicle wasn't supposed to be a Toyota, at least in North America.
That's true. It was supposed to be
Scion, right? It was supposed to be Scion, right?
Yeah. And then they just before they launched this, they killed Scion and then they rebadged it as a Toyota.
I like it. It's just, you gotta make sure you're not paying retail.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I should point out also, I got 31 miles per gallon, which is higher than the rated. They had 29 as for combined. It has a really small fuel tank. It's only 13 gallons. So I did actually end up having to put gas in it because I did drive it quite a bit. But still 31 miles per gallon is pretty good. Again, though, you look at that's an expectation. It's not a bonus. It's not something that somebody's going to pay for. That fuel economy is what people expect nowadays. So
right. With more power.
With more power. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. So speaking of more power.
Yes.
Let's get to the fun part. So the 2021 Lexus LC500 Convertible.
I'm really glad that you sacrificed for us.
You know, it's amazing what we'll do for our work. Yeah, this thing was hot to
We
go.
don't get paid for it, but
yeah. Exactly.
And it's
What
its
we do
own
for our
reward.
hobby? I don't know. What do we do? This thing was hot to go. She's ready, as Lyle Lovett would say.
Nice.
It was, you know, it was darn near a privilege, really. So, you know, the LC500 is heavily praised, and as well it should be. Gorgeous V8 engine, 5.0 liter. I mean, this exhaust note is right up there with Aston Martin's exhaust notes. This thing rumbles to life. But what I love is that it doesn't intrude into the cabin. It's there in a very positive way, but you're not, you know, you don't feel like you're riding on top of an engine. It's really, really graceful, really refined. Just, you know, all sorts of fun. And then when you top it off with the convertible, that's a whole nother level of engagement. So the first thing when I got into the car, and it is very low slung, it is exciting to get in sometimes. But when I first got in, I was like, okay, how do I put the top down? That's my first, it's the first thing you want to do, right? So they've actually put, and I'll send you pictures of this. It's actually very clever. They have this little pod that is, I don't know what's the size, maybe a 4-inch by 4-inch little area where they have the top down button and the Windows button, a duplicate Windows button, so that you can put the windows up or down, all four at the same time, which is really, really clever. So you're not kind of, well, you can't, it was actually the only way that I found to put the back windows down. But it was still a nice feature, a thoughtful feature to have both buttons there, very conveniently located underneath this pod once I found it. So yeah. It goes up and down in 16, I think it was 15 to 16 seconds. So it's really quick. There's a lot of machinations that go on. And I apologize. I meant to videotape it going up and down, and I forgot to do that. So we'll have to find that online somewhere. There's plenty out there.
I'll do it when I get one later in October.
Okay. Yeah, there's plenty out there. But you know, and so once it's down, all the windows are down. You've got just a flat opening. But, you know, Sam, like as we've talked about before on your Miata, where you're kind of sitting up and out of the car almost, you are definitely, I mean, your shoulders are like down in, you are in this little cockpit, which is a great feeling. It's a lot of fun. One of the things I loved was that the roof, the windscreen is very, very rakish. You know, it's really sloped, but I felt so cool in that, like, I don't know what era way, where I could put my little hand would fit on the corner and I could rest my elbow on the door sill and just kind of hang there like I was really cool. It was like just at that proper angle for that kind of look and feel. I just wish I had diamonds on my hand or something. But it's, you know,
well, you know, you're close to New York. You could probably go get some.
I could probably, but there's that whole, you know, working not paid for it thing. I mean, the car itself certainly draws attention. I mean, the number of people that stopped this thing they call it sunburst. My neighbor called it faded school bus. Other people, you know, it's banana yellow. I mean, it's a stunning yellow. And it's funny, actually, the hardtop that I spoke about a few months ago, was exactly the same color. And then just the roof it's a black roof. So, you know, overall, it was just a fantastic thing. One of the key differences that they've added from a technology standpoint is from the hard top to the soft top is that they have added Android Auto compatibility. Oddly, they don't have access to Waze, I guess, because it was only Google Maps. I don't know. I thought that was really strange, but it's, for me,
should be there.
Yeah, I could only get Google Maps to work. So that's what the default was, I should say. But for me, it was a welcome addition, obviously, because I'm an Android person. And so the last time I had it, when I had the coupe, it was only Apple CarPlay. So that was a positive. The navigation itself, I remember pulling it up. I needed to go someplace that I thought I knew where I was going, and I just wanted to confirm. And the navigation had so many lines on it, I didn't know which one to look at. So that was really weird for me.
Toyota Nav is just generally not good.
You're right. It's not. We've talked about it ad nauseum. The other thing that I was a little disappointed about, and this is very first world, but other cars have had it, is the automatic, it senses heat and cool. So other cars have had it where if the exterior temperature is a certain degree, it'll put cooled seats on or heated seats on. This doesn't have that. And so you end up getting mired in that change, in changing from hot to cool. And I love having the heated seats. I love having the ventilated seats, and I know this is very first world, but having to go in. So, if I went someplace during the day and had my cooled seats on at night, top still down, I wanted to have the heated seats on, and I would have to go in and manually change that. For $105,000, I think it would be nice if they had the option, at least, of having some kind of that auto sort of censoring. That kind of forward-thinking technology would be really cool. But otherwise, I mean, it obviously had a little tiny back seat, but there's plenty of there was a good amount of cargo room. I mean, I made the mistake of going to Bed Bath & Beyond and picking up a couple things and coming out and being like, oh, whoops, they took the CHR this morning.
How is this mattress going to fit in the car?
It was rug pads of all things. So I had gotten this giant 9x12 rug, and I forgot to order a pad with it. So I had to go, and they actually had a couple there, very neatly folded up, but I have pictures.
Does the seat back? I'm assuming it doesn't, because the convertible.
No, it doesn't go down.
Fold down. Yeah.
No. So and what I liked also is that there was still plenty of room even with the top down. So in a lot of old style convertibles, the convertible top would actually use the trunk space, for the storage. This is not the case. So there's still plenty of trunk space. It does have a baffle in the back so that you can insert that to improve conversation in the front, but then that negates anybody sitting in the back. So
I think the seats themselves negate anybody actually sitting back there.
Well,
I'm looking at a picture of this thing right now. And I think, anybody that has more than a torso, I'm sorry. I mean, unless you're an amputee from the waist down, you are not going to fit in the back seat of this thing.
Well,
come on, Toyota, Lexus, why?
It's for dogs. That's where the designer dog sits when you drive.
Well, so I've got some funny pictures of because the other thing is my 8-year-old coffee maker finally died, and so I had to pick up a coffee maker. So I've got all sorts of. I
thought you were fondly referring to a human, like a little 8-year-old that makes you coffee, and then finally died. I'm like, oh, well, this is a dark story.
These Cuisinart coffee makers. I bought one for my house here, and I bought one for my house in Saudi. And so I actually had 2 of them at one point, but the one from Saudi got damaged in the return. It actually melted.
Excellent. Nice hot cup of coffee.
Which is kind of exciting. So I have the picture I'll send you, Sam. It has the rug, the large rug pad in the back, the coffee makers in the front, the other rug pads in the trunk, and then there's a little gift for Lucy, my kitty cat.
Awesome. That's what we do, right? We find the utility in the cars. I have gotten lumber in the widest array of vehicles imaginable. I think the best was I put enough lumber for an outdoor swing set into the first generation Mazda 6.
That's amazing.
Yeah, there was a lot of wood in the car. It was not happy.
I love it. But no, I mean, look, the LC500, much has been written about it. It's won a ton of awards. It's gorgeous. The thing that really struck me, and I got to have dinner with the fabulous Tabitha Hammer, who works for Haggerty, and she moved into town fairly recently, and we were talking a little bit about this. She actually would be a fun guest sometime. We should have her on. But
come on down.
To me, the LC500 shows what Toyota and Lexus, I should say, can do from an emotional standpoint, from a styling standpoint, from an experience. It's that the exhaust note alone, do that in more sedans, do that in the performance, like just the performance aspect of it was really fantastic. And I will be the first one to say that far too many of my reviews of Lexus involve, something along the lines of stayed because they're just not very engaging a lot of times. But I just, this vehicle just really shows what that brand can do.
Yeah, I think that the issue for them is that what people buy from them is, I know they can do it, and we want it, but is that what actually sells?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I saw one review that said, this is the best Lexus that nobody's buying. And, you're absolutely right. But that's part of being a good steward of the brand. As we've talked about before, brand stewardship is incredibly important as the market migrates away from baby boomer domination. Baby boomers have dominated the market for decades.
Well, they still have all the money though. So
no, but they don't. But Gen X and millennials are starting to move into their mid 40s and later.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. I mean, we're starting to get to the point where we have to recognize, we've got to be designing and producing for a millennial who's not living in his or her mother's basement, but instead is moving into peak earning years. Yeah. And, so I think that Lexus is a brand that they have a huge challenge because they were so baby boomer focused that most millennial children, when they think of Lexus, they think of their parents' cars. And that's a problem. And I shouldn't say millennials children, but they're the children of the baby boomers. So
yeah. But that's true. I mean, so the oldest millennials are just now I think they're like in their late 30s, right? Now I'm at the tail end of Generation X, so I'm in my early mid.
So yeah, I mean the way that Gen X is 65 to 77,
right?
And the millennials are birth year 78.
Right. And, yeah. So I'm right at that crossover, and I will tell you that the LC, great. That's a total boomer car. Because millennials and Gen Xers, like we've got families.
Absolutely.
And so I would love to tuck that into the garage. It might be a good time, but it's not going to work for the lifestyle. So if they can do that in like a version of the Sienna for Lexus, right. Awesome. That's going to like more fans.
Or an RC.
Right. Yeah. But even, I had the Lexus RX 350 F Sport.
Yeah, and RX is not good.
But my point is that even that, like, give it personality, it. I certainly enjoyed that one more than just the RX 400, which doesn't have any personality. So,
true.
Right? That's the thing is that give these vehicles that kind of emotional experience as a kid hauler. So yeah. I just, I feel like that's something that there's opportunity there to be more engaging, to take some of the features, take some of the fun in that we've experienced with the LC and move that into vehicles like the RX, where you can. Obviously, you're not going to do something stupid, but but do something that has that kind of fun. Lexus doesn't really have, say, like a GLC, a Mercedes GLC 43 AMG coupe competitor. They haven't really gone into that coupe space from an SUV standpoint at all. And
don't worry, I'm sure it's probably coming.
So I think that there's opportunity there. And I think that the LC500 to me is just a vehicle that demonstrates what Lexus can still do.
Yeah, I wonder if some of this kind of thinking is why Toyota invested in Mazda. They own 20% of Mazda now.
Yeah.
And, Mazda, I think, maybe where Scion struggled, I think Mazda has a little more of that. They've got more of that design flair, that emotion to that brand, and maybe, they compare, most of their vehicles are more competitive with Toyota brand vehicles, but have more of that emotion to them.
Right.
And, maybe a little bit more of a premium feel to them. And maybe they see Mazda as being that complement that, gives them an inroad with those kinds of vehicles, and as customers maybe want to move into those kinds of vehicles, they can support Mazda to bring that to the table.
Right. Maybe. I mean, I hope so, because I think that, Lexus and Toyota to some extent also, I think, they are a little bit stagnant at times. Lexus certainly, and need to have some kind of an emotional boost.
They are, definitely cautious. I think that's their sort of MO, is to be, polished but cautious. And when you're trying to appeal to emotions, like a little bit of that caution goes out the window. And I think that's why I like the CHR, is because it's less cautious.
No, absolutely. I agree. Yeah.
So
what were you driving, Dan?
Yeah, so I, speaking of total boomer cars, I had the 2020 Lincoln Aviator. I think it was the Black Label PHEV. I didn't grab
Grand Touring.
The sticker. It was so it was the Grand Touring. So this is a really well done premium crossover. They've done a really good job with the Aviator and the Explorer that underpins it. I think, Ford was saying part of their move to rear wheel drive was to give it a premium feel. And it sure does. It's interesting because I really liked the Black Label Nautilus, but you could definitely tell that was based on a front wheel drive, Ford Edge platform. They did as much as they could. They gave, in that instance, gave it a good interior, pretty decent suspension tuning, but it still had some of that clumsiness that the Edge just has. That is not the case for the Aviator. It's, especially in PHEV, it's very powerful. It's got like 600 pound-feet of torque or something.
It's the most powerful production Lincoln ever.
Yeah, it's weird because it's pretty understated about it. It's not like always raring to go. It's just there when you need it. Otherwise, you don't ever really even think about it. And it has a twin turbo V6. I think it's got the 3-liter version of the EcoBoost. So it's quiet and refined in a way. Not an
EcoBoost in a Lincoln anymore.
I'm sorry, whatever they.
That's a Ford only brand now.
Sure. Can we call it Twin Force? Let's call it Twin Force. But that engine it's an interesting contrast. Like we were talking about the Cadillac XT6 last week. And this is sort of the similar analog, right? But it takes a slightly different path. It feels a lot more special than the XT6 in its interior outfitting. The refinement of the powertrain feels better. The XT6 isn't bad, but some of the other Cadillacs have that issue where they've got the 4-cylinder, and so you've got the vibration and the grittiness. The grittiness was there with the XT6 a little bit, and just sort of the vibes you feel. This is not like that. It's also a much newer hardware, so I expect Cadillac is going to jump ahead when they do their next thing as well. But it's really nice, and it should be, because it's just like $86,000. But I was thinking about it too. Lincoln has we've bagged on Lincoln for like 10 years now, but they finally, with this version of the Aviator, they've gotten to a point where they're pricing competitive with stuff like the X5 PHEV, or whatever Mercedes version. They changed their name, so I don't know what the heck I'm talking about with the model names over there yet. Is it the GLE?
Well, it's bigger than a GLE. It's like in between a GLE and a GLS.
Right.
A little smaller than the GLS.
Yeah.
But it's because the GLE isn't a 3-row. So
right. So but that's the thing. It's like it's not only priced that way and feature competitive. It's overall like refinement wise and design and style and execution. It's there. Like it didn't seem absurd to me that it's an $86,000 Lincoln. Like it felt worth it, that's different. Like
that's huge. I mean, just the fact that you've just said the words "it felt worth it."
Yeah, it feels really amazing. Special. Right. It's lovely inside and out. The design it's not as sort of striking on the outside or as it's conservative. It looks great, but it's more conservative. It's not looking to break ground. It's looking to look good, and it does. Interior wise, it's right there. It's got really good materials and really nice design. The controls are decently easy to figure out. It's sophisticated, so you do spend like your first couple of hours fiddling with everything. And one of the things that just kept on getting me was it has electrically operated door handles. So it's like there's no door handle to pull. When you want to get out, it's a thumb switch. And every time I was like looking like, what do I pull? It's like that felt a little bit like a gimmick, but I think also it cleans up the interior too. Like you don't have to package a pull door handle. You can leave space for something else. I don't know.
That's sort of like what I experienced with the Volvo, where the push button start. Yeah. With the turn knob on the center console, it wasn't anything I ever got used to.
Right, and it's not any more convenient. Like I'm trying to make a justification for it. Like maybe it makes room for something extra, but not really. And that the Explorer has pull handles, right. So it's not like they didn't engineer it. I don't know. It makes it different, but it's a little bit of a gimmick and whatever. Like
I will say though, so I just had to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
So I have a new dishwasher, not because I wanted it, but because my dishwasher broke. It's that kind of season apparently. And I got one of those new Fisher Paykel. Exactly. Yeah. I got one of those Fisher Paykel pull-out drawer dishwashers.
Yeah.
So there's two, and when I was showing it, when I was playing with it, inevitably I would pull down because that's the motion that you make to open your dishwasher, right?
Yeah.
Like you pull, and this you pull out, you pull straight out.
Yep.
And I was so proud of myself because yesterday I realized after about 3 weeks of ownership, I am now just pulling it out. I'm no longer pulling down.
Yeah, see, it's
right. So it's about what you get used to it.
I think if you owned this, you would get trained eventually. Yes. It had the buttons for the shifter, which also screwed me up for a while. I don't really like those. The transmission's a little slow to respond, but it's not the worst implementation of push button shifting. It's just I get why they did it here. They definitely saved space by tucking the buttons at the base of the center stack. There's a lot more room on the console for other controls. So I get that one. It's a little underwhelming, but when you're looking to change decades of practice, you're going to have some hits and some misses. They seriously invested their efforts to make the Aviator special. And I think they hit a bullseye. Even the materials and the controls that you touch, everything feels good. So I was impressed with that. And it's very quiet out on the road. It's not super duper efficient. The hybrid is there more for power and performance than it is necessarily for fuel economy. You can plug it in and you have different modes. It has 5 different drive modes, which I liked. Technology wise, it's easy to use. It's easier to use than something like iDrive. It may not have as deep a feature set as iDrive, but it definitely has a lot of things it can do. There's an app that you can put on your phone that opens up some more features too.
The app is actually really cool because you can lock, unlock, start, and drive it, and you can start the Aviator. So the app is actually really pretty useful in terms of replacing the traditional key.
Yeah, you can. It works through Bluetooth LE to make your phone. Once you pair your phone, once you pair the My Lincoln app on your phone with the car, then your phone becomes the key. And so, if your phone is in your pocket, you don't even have to take it out. You walk up and unlock it with the phone, even if you don't have the fob on you. And then similarly, you can start the car with that as well.
Yeah, it's for all that we gave them crap, they were working hard.
Well, the interior though is stunning.
Oh, I love
all
the
Lincoln
interior.
interiors are stunning to me.
I was a little annoyed though when I had to go get a 4x8 sheet of plywood. And I used a tape measure, and I was like, well, it should fit diagonally. It's just one sheet. Nope. It's like they designed the opening specifically to not accept the 4x8 sheet of plywood. And then like you can get it in just a little bit, and then there's some interior trim that gets in the way, and it's just like, so I'm there at like the hardware store with this sheet of 4x8 material, and I'm like, I need to leave this here. I had to go borrow my brother-in-law's ancient E350 van that smells like one big greasy car part and put it in there, which it worked out. And it was an all Ford show, so there's that. But I got to thinking like what you would really compare this to, and the best thing I could come up with was, this is a really sharp competitor for an XC90. It has the style. It's not quite as avant-garde as the Volvo. The Volvo really does, it did. Still to this day, it's an older bit of styling now, but it still looks fantastic. The Aviator looks good, but it's not as distinctive. The interior in the Aviator is just as good, and the way it drives is a lot better. This one has air suspension, and it's very smooth on the road. It soaks up a lot of the high frequency stuff, so it goes down the road with a lot of comfort and authority. So I was impressed with it overall, and it's they were really smart to skip having the Aviator when everything was based on the older Explorer, and just bring it back for this new generation. They did a lot of work, and I know there was a little issue about the launch with quality and stuff. I didn't have any quality issues. It all looked and felt really good.
Those seem to have been ironed out by the beginning of this year. I think they pretty much got that sorted out by the end of 2019. Yeah.
So I was very impressed with it, and it goes back to our question from last week or the week before, where we were talking, would you buy the XT6, or I forget, maybe it was the XC90 that we were comparing it with. I would have a hard time comparing or not choosing the Aviator over the XT6. So it's direct competitor from across town. And they're different cars, but this one just it feels like it's worth the money more than that one. So.
And I feel like also Black Label does offer some nice services. I think that they've migrated, they've changed some different things, but they've done a nice job of offering, Lincoln Service Valet, pickup and delivery. They've got some nice lifestyle features that can really come in handy too. So yeah. I think that when you're comparing these vehicles, you have to also compare, especially if you're doing the Black Label, you have to compare the what else comes with the vehicle beyond just the vehicle itself. Yeah,
well, that's the ownership experience, and that's what keeps people coming back to Lexus, is because they care less about the cars than how they're treated, and I think that's pretty universal. I would go back to a good dealer for a brand I'm less enthused about than to get the perfect car and have to suffer with the world's worst dealer. It just ruins it. And I guess sort of like the main criticisms are those multi-way seats. We got along with them a little better this time, but there's still like just one part of it that digs into the back of my rib cage, and it's just like, no matter how I said it, I couldn't quite get comfortable. And the audio system does not sound good at all. And I'm very picky about that, so maybe other people will be pleased with it, but I just thought it was like, that's not something I will pay for. It's the highest end audio system sounded bad. So you're doing okay when somebody picky can really only pick those two things out. So good job.
Well done.
Well, unfortunately for you, I think that 28 speaker Revel system comes standard in the Grand Touring. So
I mean, that's okay. As long as I don't see a line item for it, so they just hide the cost somewhere. If I see a line item for it, I'm gonna redline it. I'm gonna cross it out and be like, I don't want that.
Well, it's funny that because I actually forgot to mention in the LC500 convertible that I was really disappointed with the sound system. I know it's supposed to be really fantastic, but I never felt like it was like I had it like up to maximum because I didn't feel like it was like enveloping me. Part of it was there was no roof, but that kind of stuff, it all plays into that experience. It plays into that. You're talking $87,000.
Right. Yeah.
You know, the sound system should be something that you're all about as well.
Yeah.
So let me ask you guys both a question related to convertibles. Why would you buy a convertible and never put the top down?
I have no idea. I mean, the first new car I ever bought was a Volkswagen Cabriolet, and I had matching gloves, hats, and mittens in it for people because
that is commitment.
I was like, at least once a month, this top is coming down, even in the wintertime. And if people complained about it, I said, "There's your hat, there's your scarf." I meant business.
Yeah.
Who does that?
No, like a convertible costs more. It's a commitment. Like you buy the convertible because you want the car with the top of the car.
Right. Well, it costs more. You know, in most cases, it doesn't drive as well. I mean, most of the time, most convertibles, are they've taken a unibody design and hacked the roof off, and they're usually not as rigid. Most convertibles are not designed from the ground up as convertibles, like some sports cars are. So, and then you're usually giving up rear seat room, giving up some cargo space. You're making a lot of sacrifices to have this folding top. So why would you drive it around with the top up all the time? I mean, I know I so frequently see people in convertibles, when beautiful weather, especially when it's not too hot. I mean, I can understand maybe sometimes if it's, like 95, 100 degrees and, you want to have the air conditioning on, fine, whatever, but
exactly. You can put the air conditioning on and still have the sun.
I will say,
why would you buy a convertible and never put the top down? I know that there's, at least one person in my neighborhood that has like a 2010 Mustang convertible. I have never once ever seen the top down on that car. And I see it so often.
I yell out, "What are you waiting for? A nice day?" Like it's just especially because on a gorgeous day.
Do you legitimately heckle people? You drive around Greenwich like, "Hey,
I do. I'm one of those people.
Yeah, I think so. While I wouldn't necessarily, convertibles is not a thing I would choose on my own. But if you want them, they're not pleasant. Like if your speed gets really above like 50 or 60 miles an hour. So
that's not true.
Well,
depends on the
LC500 was very pleasant at 100.
But
purely hypothetically.
Yeah,
purely hypothetically.
So personally, they start to get loud and they aggravate my tinnitus. So that's one of the things. Like
fair enough.
It just like it gets loud on the highway, and while you have the airflow, like if the sun's beating down on you, that cannot be not great too. So it depends. Like if you're in town a lot, put the top down on the convertible. But then again, like I personally wouldn't buy a convertible because like
and that's perfectly fair. That's perfectly legitimate.
That's my driving. But some people enjoy that, like the sundown, the wind in your hair, stuff like it. So I don't know. Yeah, and I get it. It's definitely I like the charms of a convertible in the right venue. They're enjoyable.
So, to the listeners, if you own a convertible and you drive it with the top up, please write in, tell us why.
Yes.
I personally am extremely curious to know why you would buy a convertible and drive it with the top up.
Maybe they're those people that buy cars with like resale only in mind. Like, well, the convertible is going to have a higher resale price. It's like, you're fine, but you're like, why would you buy a thing and not enjoy
our
it?
podcast?
Huh?
I don't think those people are listening to our podcast.
We don't have a lot of finance people listening to our podcast.
No, but I agree. And it was funny because when they, after the LC500 went away, I realized that I had never actually driven it with the top up, which is not a good thing when you're trying to review something.
No, I think that's better.
I do think that, from a visibility standpoint and all that good stuff. But I agree, Sam. I don't understand that for all the reasons that we've talked about. But So will you ask that guy, the person, the woman, male who's driving the Mustang in your neighborhood?
I'd prefer not to.
In your nicest possible way, not like, you know, you dumb, you know. But
that's the best Bartleby the Scrivener answer.
What are you doing?
I prefer to ask that question to people that I'll probably never actually meet in person.
Yeah, listen, sometimes the best thing for neighbors is just to mutually ignore each other.
Exactly, yes.
But no, it's funny.
Like that guy down the street that had the John James for Senate sign. You know.
Hey, no politics. So no, my neighbor has a Jeep Wrangler 4-door, and that thing, it's always stripped bare, and it's so fun. And, you know, the kids are hanging out and stuff, and it's great. That's how it's supposed to be. And I totally agree. Convertibles are meant to have the top down. Everything about them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and the one last thing about the linking, to just completely whipsaw back to the topic. I thought of you when I opened one of the places in the center console, and they've designed a nice little place for your phone with an inductive charging pad, and that's where the USB port is. It's like it's got a place for stuff.
Excellent. I love that.
So, yeah. All right, moving on. It's been a pretty busy week of stuff. There was the GM-Nikola partnership that was announced, and then they sort of got in trouble at some point.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
And then we also have to touch on the Lucid Air, because that was a pretty big deal. But yeah, the Nikola thing, like, I don't know what's going on there. Like, they came out with the announcement, and then like the next day there was this thing by Hindenburg Research or whatever that was saying it's all fraud, and GM didn't do due diligence, and what is going on?
So for those that aren't familiar with Nikola Motors, this is a startup company that came out in 2017, I think. Initially, they announced a hydrogen fuel cell long haul semi, you know, and this was before Tesla showed off their semi. And you know, part of their deal was, you know, they wanted to build these fuel cell powered long haul trucks. And also build a hydrogen fueling network to support them. And, you know, so they're working on both of these paths, and they over the years, you know, they've developed a number of key partnerships with various suppliers and investors, including, you know, Bosch was a very important partner for them, you know, working on the fuel cell technology, working on the electric drive system, and then, you know, also working with other partners on the hydrogen fueling side. And, you know, this summer, Nikola went public through one of these now very popular reverse mergers with what's known as a SPAC, a special purpose acquisition company. So these are companies that are set up, you know, a bunch of investors put a bunch of money in, they go public, they do an IPO, and the company has no actual business. They just have a bunch of cash in the bank from their investors. And they're set up specifically to do an acquisition. And we've seen a bunch of these this summer. Nikola, Velodyne did one, Luminar, there's been a number of others. And won't get into all the details of why, but when Nikola went public with through this transaction, their stock price immediately spiked, you know, and their market cap went to like $18 billion. This is a company that had $36,000 in revenue last year.
I think we all together probably had more than $36,000 revenue.
Yeah. You know, why aren't we worth $18 billion?
No, you're absolutely right.
Well, let's put together a SPAC.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, no, I mean, we wouldn't create the SPAC. We need a SPAC to buy us. You know?
Oh, okay.
So anyway, you know, and of course, you know, this got a lot of attention from a lot of people, you know, taking a look at this company. You know, is this company for real? You know, why is this company that has, you know, effectively no revenue, still a couple of years away from their first product, why are they suddenly worth more than, you know, automakers that, you know, have hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue and make profits and all this stuff? So, you know, it got a lot of people looking at them. And, you know, the founder of Nikola, a guy named Trevor Milton, who was CEO after the the transaction. He became chairman. They hired another guy to be CEO. A lot of people see this guy as, kind of a huckster, kind of another Elon Musk. And, not coincidentally, the naming of the company was very much for the same reason that Tesla is called Tesla. Nikola Tesla. That's Tesla's first name was Nikola, hence the name.
I think we should, our SPAC should be called Westinghouse, because Westinghouse is the one who actually funded Tesla to develop AC power. So anyway.
No, he fought with Tesla.
What? No, Edison fought with Tesla.
Oh, you're right. Yes, you're right. Anyway, so on Tuesday of this week, GM announced that they were doing a strategic partnership with Nikola, where GM would get 11% of the stock in Nikola, and they would provide the fuel cells for the Nikola One semi through their joint venture, their fuel cell joint venture with Honda that they're building, and they would also do the engineering and manufacturing of the Nikola Badger, which is the electric pickup truck that Nikola announced earlier this year. And when they announced it, they said, we're looking for a partner to work with to build this for us, because basically Nikola didn't want to go into actually, to tool up to build this consumer pickup truck. They wanted to focus on the semis. And so GM is going to build the Badger based on the same platform as the GMC Hummer that's coming next year, using their Ultium battery system and all this other stuff. And, then 2 days later, this Hindenburg Research comes out with this big report, basically trying to take down Nikola. And as it turns out, the day before they published the report, they bought a whole bunch of, short options in Nikola, and Nikola's stock price tanked after the report, and accusing Nikola of all kinds of shady things, like, for example, when they did their initial reveal in 2017, that, they showed a video of the truck in motion, implying that this was actually a functioning prototype. And it turns out that perhaps it wasn't. According to their research, they talked to somebody who worked for Nikola at the time, and they actually had this thing on a road, long desert road with a very shallow grade, and basically got it rolling down this road, and it was rolling, not under its own power, just gravity. And
it's kind of awesome, and all I can think of is that shatterproof shattering glass on the Tesla Cybertruck.
Well,
doesn't everybody pull crap like that?
Yeah, and this is what I said in a couple of interviews over the last couple of days. To be fair, almost every concept you see from every manufacturer ever is not completely functional, or in most cases not functional at all. And the example I like to give was the original Chevy Volt concept in January 2007. You remember how much attention that thing got, and they published videos showing it driving around a neighborhood? Well, like a lot of concepts, that car, that one actually could move under its own power, sort of, but it was powered by a golf cart motor.
Yeah,
it did not have this fancy extended range EV powertrain that they showed all these cool renderings of and had a mock-up of. It was basically a golf cart underneath this fancy concept body, and this is actually very common. And I mean, nobody on the PR side of the industry likes to talk about this stuff, but it is real. This is the way it's done.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how you attract investment too. I don't think it's worth getting all that exercised about. There's other parts of the deal that, yes, fine. Look at the concept vehicle and get excited, but also look at the rest of the business. And if you're going to invest, I'm hoping that you look at all of those other things and make your decision versus just, well, the truck looks cool, let's just throw money at them, which, to be fair, seems like what has happened in that industry with a lot of players.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Although, also to be fair, GM has not actually put any cash into this deal. They're getting 11% equity in the company, but they're not putting up any cash. They are putting in engineering resources, but a lot of that, is already being done anyway for the Hummer and Chevy trucks. So there's not going to, they're not developing a new platform for Nikola. Most of the hard engineering work and tooling the factory and everything is already being done anyway. For GM, this is basically all upside. They get, potentially, if this all works out, they get to have better capacity utilization of their factory, more utilization of their batteries and motors and everything. It's all good for GM, and, didn't really cost them anything.
Doesn't it seem like this is all stuff that GM doesn't really need Nikola for, other than the buzz? Like, this is all stuff that GM's good at.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think to Sam's point too about the capacity utilization, I think that there are things that GM benefits from with this tie-in. So yeah, I agree. But it also, GM is good at these things, but they don't have a reputation of being good at these things. And that's, part of it too, is when they're teaming up with a brand like Nikola that, is that exciting, charismatic startup kind of feel to it with all its pros and cons. So I think that there's positives from a business case standpoint for General Motors, but there's also positives from a goodwill standpoint as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that was the thing that struck me, was like all of especially the fact that they're not putting in cash, they're putting in expertise, really. And
right.
It's
expertise they have to pay for already.
Right. It's a way for them to get a return on stuff they've already invested in.
Right.
And it's almost like it's a PR campaign to a degree. Like we are partnering with this new shiny object over here. But we're bringing our vast experience, and Nikola even was messaging about this. Like, look, we've now plugged into 100+ years of vendor relationships and logistics and supply chain management and, car building expertise, which if you look at Tesla, beyond the hubris, that was the area that bit Tesla, was actually car building. A lot of the EV part of Tesla is fantastic, and their engineers are very clever, and they're doing a lot to push that part of the field ahead. But
where else would you find automotive engineers going to Home Depot and buying bits of plastic molding to help tie down their AC condensers?
Yeah. It's very much like the story. It's like, it just reminds me of like a modern day scene out of Tucker or something. But like, just the thing that GM is really good at is making like things with consistent quality, nowadays consistently good quality, and doing it for a very carefully planned cost. And they have a big machine and they know how to run it. And so if you're getting people interested in the truck, and they can use their engineering and their battery cells and their even it's the same platform as that Hummer. I think it all makes a lot of sense, and they get a way to sort of put their expertise to use and hopefully get people interested in it. It's an interesting move, and I don't know if it's going to, nobody knows if it's going to pay off, but it's probably cheaper than trying to, put the message out just bluntly, like straight ahead, right? Like, we're GM, no, we're here, we're good at this stuff, really. Like,
well, yeah, if you have to self-promote, it never goes as well.
Yeah. So that was curious and interesting. And there's already partnerships that sort of it looks like they're being smart about it. Actually, they're saying, we're going to partner over here, we're going to partner over there, and we're going to find ways.
Yeah, because they're also working with Lordstown Motors, who they basically gave the Lordstown assembly plant to. Lordstown was another one of these companies that went public through a SPAC transaction. And GM was actually an investor in that SPAC, so they own a small stake in Lordstown Motors. And I'm sure there are going to be others that we see as well, where GM is an investor and has the potential to leverage something off of these other brands that are getting hype and attention. The hype and attention that a traditional automaker is probably never going to get. Because everybody there's this fetish around startups and founders, especially in the EV business, that it's going to be hard for any traditional manufacturer to achieve that.
Yeah, it's a good. Like that's let's see how it plays out. I hope that it actually gets past this little rough patch. And anytime there's a move, especially in such a red hot sort of area of a market, that just the quote unquote disruption, right? Like there's a lot of speculators, and it's the reason why the Tesla stock is outrageously high, although it took a hit recently. But it's like a casino. It's people trying to make money, and so they're gonna defend their investments and try to minimize competition. And so you see that it's not a mature market. There's a lot of sound and fury over there. A lot of heat, not a lot of light, I guess, is what I'm trying to say in the EV space. So maybe it'll calm down and we'll forget about the whole like nonsense with the Hindenburg thing. I'm calling
You're
it adorable.
Nonsense.
I don't know if it's. Yeah. I don't. I just like it came out and I was like, this reads like a hit piece, and Trevor Milton has his own sort of like Elon Musk light personality, so you need that certain amount of hucksterism, I think, in that space. But I don't know. I can't imagine that GM didn't carefully look at things, and they didn't really take on a ton of risk, right? They're kind of like, well, if this pays off, it'll be good. If it doesn't, we can walk away. We haven't. Yeah,
I mean, worst case, maybe GM maybe looks a little foolish for getting involved with this company, but they haven't really lost anything. And frankly, to the people who think that they look foolish for this, they think GM looks foolish anyway.
Yeah, so GM is no stranger looking foolish.
Care. Yeah. So it's it's no big deal. It's really all upside for GM and no real downside in this case.
It's sort of like when Kim Kardashian married that Chris basketball player for 72 days. It was just a really, one looks good, one, just sort of whatever.
I'll take your word for it. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, well, let's talk about new product too. The Lucid Air finally dropped, and this was one that was sort of on the radar, and then like they went quiet for a little while. Now they came out with a car that it seems very expensive when you get the highest price model, but everybody lost their collective mind over the reveal of this. The configurator's up. They're doing a lot of things that a more established automaker would. They have a lot of mature, a lot of mature leadership from automakers over there. Even their PR guy is a guy that we know well. He spent years at BMW, so it's happening. I guess. So you guys both watched the Lucid reveal. What was that all about? I played with the configurator and picked my colors.
Well, it was funny because when I was looking at the run of show, it said it was like 45 minutes for this and then 40 minutes. I'm like thinking an hour and a half. I'm not going to sit there for an hour and a half. And I actually sat there every minute of it because the Q&A was really interesting. Also, it was really stilted. They basically only took questions from reservation holders as opposed to the media. But I mean, the car itself, I'm not crazy about the exterior. I don't love the front end, but the interior is stunning. I mean, it's gorgeous. And then they had the very end, they teased an SUV called the Gravity. But no, I think that this is, from a visual standpoint, it's absolutely stunning. And then from a technological standpoint, I feel like they've addressed so many of the barriers for electric vehicles, from the range, which is, I think, over 500. And correct me, Sam, I know you know these better than I do, but they've partnered with Electrify America. The recharging is super fast. Like they've just done so. They really have. I feel like they've taken every barrier to electric vehicle deployment and said, let's fix that. Let's address that question. It's just and the car looks stunning.
It does.
Yeah, I mean, we first, or at least I first saw the Air back in late 2016 when I got a briefing from Peter Rawlinson, who at the time was their CTO, and he's now CTO and CEO, and their head of design, Derek Jenkins. We had a private briefing at the LA Auto Show in late 2016, and walked through the technology side and the design, and actually went down in the garage and took a look at one of the prototypes that they had brought to LA for that. And then they showed the car publicly for the first time at the 2017 New York show, where I think you saw it. Did you get a chance to sit in it?
I did not. I think it was one of those, the New York show was really chaotic for me. Yeah. I think I glanced at it and had to move on to something that was actually coming out.
Yeah, I sat in it for a while and chatting with Derek, it's amazing, and it's a really fabulous interior. And one of the knocks on Tesla has been, especially for the Model S and the Model X, at the price points that those vehicles go for, often upwards of $100,000, compared to the competitors from Germany and Japan, in those price ranges, they don't feel like luxury cars. They don't.
Let's be fair. The interiors suck.
Okay.
They're not good.
Yes, they are not up to the par of what you can buy at that price point from other manufacturers. This car does not suffer from that. This car absolutely feels like it's worth $100,000 or more. No doubt about it. It looks like it. It feels like it. And the launch version, which I think they're calling the Lucid Air Dream Edition, that one's going to be $170,000 all in. And then over the next few months after they start building them, they'll start building lower priced models. And by sometime in 2022, they'll have a version that's supposed to start at $80,000. Which will have a shorter range. It won't have that 500-mile range. It'll be somewhat less, but it'll probably still be at least 300 miles of range. And I think that from a tech standpoint, the thing that really impresses me about what they've done here is right from the beginning, Rawlinson's focus has been on optimizing the efficiency, the energy efficiency of every system in this vehicle. Because one of the challenges for EVs, batteries are big, heavy, bulky, and expensive. And, if you want more range up until now, the solution has been add more battery. Well, that adds cost, that adds weight, which is negative to efficiency and takes away from room. So, if you can make all of that stuff more efficient, then you can get range with less battery, which reduces your cost, reduces your weight. It's a virtuous circle. And this is the argument we heard from Hyundai when they launched the Ioniq a couple of years ago. With the electric version, when it first came out, it only had 124 miles of range. And they said, well, we decided to go with a smaller battery, a 27 kilowatt hour battery, I think it was in the original one. And, because we wanted to maximize the efficiency of this thing. They've subsequently gone to a larger battery, that gives you more range, but they really wanted to optimize for efficiency. Honda said the same thing when they did the electric version, the battery electric version of the Clarity. We went with a smaller battery for more efficiency. Well, that's fine, but if you don't have enough range, then it's not good enough.
Yeah, but also though, doesn't the Air have it's got, like, at least its top end, right, is the largest battery? Yeah,
it's 113 kilowatt hours. But
right.
If I did the math, if you compare that to the top end model Tesla Model S, it's 402 mile range, at least EPA rated it. I don't think it actually does that in the real world, but it does that with a 98 kilowatt hour battery. The Air is a little bit bigger, 113 kilowatt hours, but when you adjust for the miles per kilowatt hour, the Air still has a 14% advantage in efficiency. So if just based on the battery size, that would give you 15% more range, from the battery. But then they go another 14% beyond that, so they're getting more miles out of every kilowatt hour in that battery. And they're going to offer versions with a smaller battery. And one of the options will, from the beginning, will be you can. The way the modules are laid out in the battery pack under the floor, you can, if you want extra rear legroom and footroom, you can get a version that they take 4 of the modules out from the middle of the battery pack where the rear foot underneath where the rear footwell would be, and then they lower the rear floor, so you have more room back there. And that version is still going to have well over 400 miles of range, with even with a little bit less battery capacity. So they did all these things, a lot of cool engineering in there. And Dan, you mentioned that they went quiet for a while after 2017, and a big part of that was because they were looking for money. They needed to raise cash.
I thought you needed to make noise to raise money. You have to just come out on Twitter and go on Joe Rogan's show and stuff.
Well, that's
say nonsense.
Peter doesn't even have a Twitter account.
Smart man.
Yeah. So they ultimately ended up raising $1 billion last year from the Saudi sovereign wealth fund. So the Saudi royal family basically owns the majority stake in Lucid now.
That's really interesting, given Saudi's sort of history with oil, right?
Full dependency. So I'll tell you the logic behind that is the reality is that Saudi's running out of oil. I mean, at some point in time, they will run out, and there's such high demand domestically and every barrel of oil that they use domestically is a barrel of oil that they can't sell. So there's actually benefits to them getting more fuel efficient engines out there. And Saudi Aramco actually has, I think it's 7 or 8 engine labs spread around the world that are working on engine technology. And so because they realize the need to make oil last longer, and the way that you do that, of course, is through more efficient engines. And so that's one of the reasons, that's one of the motivators behind the investment in things like Lucid. And so, so that's
they had put money into Tesla as well at one point, and sold that off.
The demand in Saudi is so extreme because they have a very young population. Most of the cars there are truck-based SUVs, and so they were working on fuel economy standards when I was there. That was one of the things that I worked on with them. So it's very counterintuitive until you understand more of the dynamics of what's going on inside the country.
So they've got their plant built now in Arizona. They're doing some pilot production, and they will start full production in the spring of 2021.
Well, and it's funny just the fact that the plant is in Arizona, because that hot weather testing, that there's such high demand on a battery in that kind of climate, but it's also very representative of the climate in the Middle East. So it's kind of just, it's counterintuitive to put a plant there, but at the same time, an electric vehicle plant of all things, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So, they've made a lot of big claims. There's a lot of impressive things that they've talked about over the past several weeks, but now we have to wait until they actually are in production, and we can try this, to see if they can actually deliver on these promises. Can they actually deliver a 500-mile range? Can they deliver the kind of efficiency they've talked about? And, can they do it with consistent quality?
Yes, that's a huge thing. So Dan, which one did you build?
I built the ultimate top level one, and I picked a really nice red, and the silver back part of the roof, and a butterscotch colored interior.
The interiors, Sam, to your last point of build quality, because the interiors certainly look absolutely stunning. Really stunning. And you're right about, there's people that we know that are working here now, and that are long time industry people. So there's clearly things that they're seeing that they believe in and that they want to be a part of, which is exciting.
Yeah. So good luck. Send us cars when you have them, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We're talking with them. Hope to get Peter Rawlinson to join us as a guest in the next couple of weeks, I hope.
Because I believe that they actually are going to have a dealer network, right? Because they talked about the dealers.
They're following the Tesla model and doing
direct showrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But, I think that even there, I think it's really well thought out. I think that I feel like sometimes Tesla's a little bit on the fly, and this
You
is a
think?
little bit more, strategically thought out.
Yeah.
Well, the ideas are good, I think, and to be fair, that is also part of that culture, is to make a move. It's the minimum viable product culture that comes out of software versus the sort of like least harmful kind of this is not going to kill people culture, very very carefully tested and tweezed, that comes out of automotive. And so software moves a lot faster than hardware in that sense, and you got to find the sort of right point. And yeah, Tesla seems to be a little bit too tipped to the like we're going to make a move and we'll figure it out as we go, versus some other automakers that are a lot more cautious. So
yeah, something I neglected to mention through all this. Peter Rawlinson, he was the chief engineer on the Model S. He worked at Tesla, and he was the chief engineer on the S. He was the architect behind that car, and so a lot of the things learned from developing that have gone into this car, and they've done some things distinctly different from Tesla. And to your point, Dan, I think it's very much not a seat of the pants kind of thing. I think it's much better thought out than what Elon Musk's approach to business.
Yeah. So good luck. Send us cars. Come on the show.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it. We had some questions.
We have a bunch of them. So let's start with one that we skipped on last week because we were running long. This is from Blake Swan. So on the previous week's show, talking about performance bargains, Harvey Simon asked a question, and I was yelling when listening to your discussion on Hackett retiring. The objectivity on this podcast seems to be lacking for any GM or Ford product discussed. The fact that Hackett and company decided to do away with its passenger vehicles has proven to be a costly move. No way I am getting an EcoSport thing if I can get an affordable Ford. If I want to get an affordable Ford. Compounding the problem is the next generation Focus and Fiesta are getting rave reviews overseas. I wish I didn't have to hear that you are all close to Ford management and especially gave them a pass. Is that truly being a journalist in your eyes? So it was actually, Blake's actually got a couple of questions, but let's address that one first. Actually, let me get to the next one that ties into this. Also, to clarify the last email, all three of you do such a great job on the other manufacturers that might be cause for the greater frustration. The Infiniti Q50, Q60 Redline was spot on. You captured the good and the bad very accurately, and I look forward to the podcast every week, and I thank you for that. So how do you guys want to respond to that question of objectivity, especially with regard to GM and Ford?
You, Sam, you're based in Michigan, and because of your day job and your work history, you personally know a lot of the people at the companies. That's not a terrible thing. I wouldn't say that we're close to Ford management. We have a familiarity. The very same as, I out here in my advertising side of my career, I know people at other agencies. I know people at production companies and it's an industry. And I know we had the discussion about whether or not we consider ourselves part of the industry, but it's the industry we cover at the very least. So I don't know that it's we're close and they're our buddies and we gave them a pass. I share Blake's frustration that, Ford shut out some cars that I really think are viable products in the market, and I would love to have them here. Focus on the Fiesta, even the last ones were good, and then they just let them sort of wither. They weren't selling, and Ford is leveraged up to their molars still. So it's a low margin business. They've got to make the moves to where they think they can make revenue, and I think that shutting up or not doing the cars and losing money while they could take the same hardware and make crossovers and higher transaction prices, more revenue potentially, that seems like the sort of moves you'd want to make from from a sort of like business move perspective. I don't know that's worked out, but they're Ford's cars, like they seem to have cranked up the sticker prices too. So it's like a 1-2. But I personally, I'm not really all that close to Ford. I think the person I'm closest to at Ford is Mike Levine, because I keep asking him for trucks. I don't know, Rebecca, where are you in all of it?
So I would say I really don't know Jim Hackett at all. I've met him a couple of times because right after he started, I moderated an event for Ford out in the San Francisco Bay Area. That was, again, right after he started. I would say I've had some really good constructive conversations with Jim Farley. But I certainly was much closer to people like Mark Fields and even Alan Mullally than I am to really spending one-on-one time with Jim Hackett. I have not done that. I have with the other with the other two guys. So I think that there is an element to where it's a combination of you want to be objective, and I think that we are, for the most part, pretty objective. It's always constructive criticism, though. That's the thing that I think, we don't trash any car for the sake of trashing the car, or because we don't like a PR person or something. Well, Tesla, yeah. But I think that there's a balance between providing a constructive criticism. Blake talked a little bit, he wrote a little bit more about understanding the dynamics of the industry, and you can be blacklisted. I wrote an article, my second article for Forbes way back in 2011. It was not a critical article, but the headline implied that it was critical. And that manufacturer blacklisted me for 10 years. So, it was, they canceled all my appointments with them. They canceled, it was just boom, that's it, out. So it can happen. And I'll tell you, it's interesting.
And it does happen. Having worked on the PR side of this business for a time as well, I know I never did it or wanted it to happen, but I know that it does happen, that people do get blacklisted when they piss people off. We are not actively trying to avoid that or, to actively piss anybody off.
No, that never plays into it. But I will say, like, you do have to have balance. And when we have been critical, most of the time, it's not something that's news to the automaker anyway. They've heard those criticisms of their product, and certainly internally, I'm sure that those criticisms came up before they even released it. So they have familiarity with the complaint we're often making. And as long as you're sort of backing it up, it's fair game. If you just say, well, I don't like this car because I don't like that company and I can't substantiate it, and oh yeah, the PR guy's a jerk and I'm going to have a feud with him. Yeah, you're going to wind up, they're not going to spend, the money to put you in the product and then have you trash it. I realize that almost sounds like they're threatening and it's a pay to play, and it's not. It's more PR in some ways than it is journalism, and you have to bear that in mind and actually practice journalism, because otherwise, you're a lifestyle blogger, which has its place. I'm not crapping on lifestyle bloggers, but it's different, So we try to offer that informed criticism and critique, while also, understanding fairly what we're saying. And that's our job. Like, if I don't like something, I have to step back and say, do I not like it because of me? Do I think that this is wrong because of decisions they've made that put it sort of in this place amongst its competitive set? So it's an active, it's a job. So I'm curious though why there's that that consideration, especially with Ford, that where we gave them a pass, because I don't know that we did. I mean, we've talked about their products before, and I love the feedback too. So I want to feel like we're sort of like carping here. Like
we're not being defensive. I think we're just trying to explain where we're coming from.
Yeah. I think that we consistently, going to every product with the mindset of positive. We want to get into a car and we want to like it, because this is a big deal for people. A lot of time and energy and resources have gone into this car. It's funny because when I think about products like the Lexus infotainment system, where we've all had issues, but I got to tell you, every time I sit in that car, I want that thing to be better than the last time. I want to like it. I want to have a good experience with it. And that, I think, is our mindset for the most part. And if we have a better experience, like for instance, I like the fact that now it has Android Auto and it didn't before. And, with a Ford, I think that we've all, had those experiences where it was okay. It wasn't the best thing that we've ever driven, but it wasn't the worst thing. But when they do things like the Lincoln Aviator, that interior is stunning. And, and we look uninformed to say otherwise, because across the board, people acknowledge that interior is stunning. So, I think that there's objectivity there, but there's also the objectivity of I think we bias towards, we do want to like it. We want to like all the products that are put in front of us, not because of the favoritism, but because we know what's gone into the design of that product. We know that years of engineering and development and time and energy and money and the resources required to come out with a vehicle, the complexity of the vehicle, the engineering, all those things. You want those people to succeed. Even Tesla, I've said it before and I will say it again, nobody wins if these brands fail. And so we want them to do well. And so I think that we do bias towards positive, but I think for different reasons than we've necessarily stated before.
And, to the specific question about giving Ford a pass, on doing away with cars, I think we have expressed our frustration that, new Focus and Fiesta, we can't get them. But at least for me personally, I understand the business reasons why. And
Absolutely.
I don't disagree fundamentally, with why they did it, why they discontinued those products in North America from a business perspective. As somebody that likes cars and likes to drive fun cars, I am disappointed and annoyed that we can't get those cars here. I've also, I've expressed my disappointment and annoyance, with the American consumer that mostly refuses to buy those cars.
Well, and it might be different too.
That's why they don't sell them.
Yeah, it might be different with the in the case of the Focus in particular. The only way you're getting a Focus here is the Escape, and the Escape was one of those that was like, okay, it is expensive in its competitive set, and it doesn't blow you away. Like, it's expensive and it's good and it has more power than a lot of the competition, but kind of left me a little cold. So it's not that like sort of like class leading product that you might expect if they're going to narrow their offerings so much and really kill it in a single segment. That's not what happened. So I can understand Blake's frustration if he's trying out cars, trying to get that sort of the Focus hardware here, and the only way you can, and it's just not as good as we'd like it to be. It looks good though. That's true.
But also, I mean, I remember ironically talking to Jim Farley about this when they decided to discontinue cars. The reality is that from a marketing standpoint, from a market standpoint, we're at like 80% truck now, and which just a couple years ago was 50-50, and people define, when people talk about their car, they are actually often talking about a crossover. So their definition of a car is different. And we've, as a market, we have migrated away from thinking of a car as a sedan or, you know, God forbid, a hatchback. You know, we talked earlier about the influence of baby boomers on the marketplace, and hatchbacks were one of the body styles that they killed. Gen X loves hatchbacks for their practicality. Baby boomers hate them because that's what they had, you know, crappy Ford Escort hatchbacks.
Hey,
as
listen,
kids.
as us Gen Xers clean up the mess you boomers left us, not
Exactly.
you boomers, but like
Give
we
us
need a
some
practical
hatchbacks.
car. Like, yeah. And it's funny, like crossovers are basically like small wagons.
They are.
Yeah, they're
just
elevated
taller.
wagons.
They're elevated wagons. Exactly. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, you know, hopefully we address that for you, Blake, and please keep the conversation going. Because I don't want it to come off as we're defensive, but hopefully that gives you a little bit more insight into at least where our heads are at.
All right. So let me. Next one is also from Mr. Blake Swan. I'm assuming it's Mr.
It is.
I don't think I've ever met. I don't think I've ever met
Yes.
A woman named Blake. But at any rate, when discussing the Volvo XC90 powertrains, I was curious on your thoughts if losing the supercharger and adapting the new 48-volt electric turbochargers would make this a more efficient, lighter engine. I believe Borg Warner, BMTS, IHI, and Mitsubishi all make similar designs, with Garrett being a little different. Do you think Volvo would use this going forward, or was that a one-time development cost that they won't look at making again because of the EV hybrid focus? Also, I followed up with some insiders to the industry. If I was being too harsh for saying that there's a bias with GM and Ford with the previous question, I was told by all five that I was wrong, simply because I do not fully understand how manufacturers exclude people. If there's one criticism mentioned about the car you've got to drive, I was told that you could lose 7 positives and one. You could post 7 positives and 1 negative. The company rep will reach out to tell you it was not appreciated that you characterized the car and will make life tough for you with the brand going forward. Essentially, the manufacturers dictate the rules, and everyone plays along unless they've been around long enough in the industry that there's a fan base that's quite large for them. I apologize for the unfair statement. So let me address that last part first. I have written many negative reviews, and I've given many negative reviews over the last 14 years I've been doing this. Yeah. And you know, I have had PR people follow up to ask, if, or to try to understand what the issue was. In some cases, not always. Sometimes, they just let it slide. I personally, I guess I must be a much nicer guy than Rebecca is. I've never, to my knowledge, at least, been banned by anybody. But I think usually when they do blacklist somebody, to Rebecca's previous point, there's usually something else behind it. It's not because you have posted one negative review.
You've been asking for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that simple.
I had never, I was not asking for it. I assure you.
Well, no, I mean, generally.
I was really caught off guard.
Yeah.
And that is still a strange situation with you in that particular company. I don't know what's going on.
Yes. It is being resolved, though, I will say.
Okay. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah. It's weird because there are little fiefdoms, and those people move around. And so they'll be at one company, they'll build their fiefdom, and they'll have their favorite journalists and their blacklist, and then they'll move to another company, and that situation follows them. So it's weird as a journalist. It's like, okay, well, if you don't want to sell any of the cars, don't send them to me to drive. That's fine. Whatever. You're like, you don't like what I have to say. All right. But it's never really been my experience that they're watching that closely. You send them clips and links so that they know that their media loan has been effective, because they have to report on that. And so to a certain degree, it's a symbiotic relationship, right? Like, you gave me the thing, I made the content, here's the content, so you can justify why you gave me the thing, so you can give me more things. And
this was not actually it was not actually a car review.
So that's even weirder.
It was a commentary on it was basically talking about their standing and their in the marketplace. And then, so as I said, I had a number of conversations with them afterwards, and they just basically shut me down.
That's such a PR mistake. Like that is your opportunity. That's your opening to go on a charm offensive. And to just shut somebody out like that is really, it comes off as. But
I think their perspective was they didn't need me, I needed them. Which is, I mean, and to Blake's point, like that is very true. There are, the first thing that they look at are the numbers, and so I don't know. I mean, I will I just, I don't know.
All right. Well, let's.
I've never gotten called out like that. Where like, oh, you wrote a negative review and you like we didn't appreciate it. Like often it's like, hey, you wrote this thing. I'd love to talk with you about it a little more, and then you get an interview out of it. You get more content. So like, that usually works.
So to the question of the Volvo powertrains and using electric turbos, I wouldn't rule out seeing Volvo adopt electric turbos in the future. There are some challenges with them. Obviously it does require adoption of a 48 volt electrical system, and Volvo is actually doing that. They're moving to make that standard. There are new products coming out that will be the baseline is 48 volt mild hybrid systems, and then strong hybrids on top of that. So we may well see them do that. At the time that their current generation of stuff was developed, those electric turbos were not ready in the marketplace yet. There are some that are out there now. Audi uses them. Mercedes-Benz uses them on some of their engines. Mercedes on their new 3-liter inline six has an e-booster on there. And there are other manufacturers going this direction. So I wouldn't rule out them using 48 volt turbos going forward.
Yeah, I think that the difference to me would be, is it lighter? Is it less complex? And does it fit the rest of their powertrain? And I think that the answers to all of that is probably yes. Even the motors you're going to have in there to spin them up are going to be lighter than some of the extra plumbing, right? You're trading one thing for another, and that's all the engineering is compromise.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, definitely the fact that you can spin them up so quickly versus waiting for the pressure drop to do it with the like actual physics probably helps out. And it's basically like, what was the superchargers that they used? They were really popular in the 80s and 90s. Prochargers. They were basically like the turbine side of a turbocharger with a gearbox on the front.
Yeah, it was. I forget who made those. It was basically like a centrifugal supercharger.
Yeah. So yeah, but I think it's probably possible. I don't know that Volvo is really looking to develop another engine. So I think that Drive E powertrain, they're going to just keep tweaking it until they absolutely have to do another engine if they have to. But
yeah, well, like I said, I don't think they'll do an all new engine, but I could see them updating the existing one, and dropping the supercharger and dropping the mechanical supercharger and going with an e-turbo instead. And I'll put a link in the show notes to an article I did when I interviewed Garrett last year on their e-turbos, and it's got some good information in there about that as well.
All right. Next question. What do we got? What do we want to cover?
Let's see. Compact cars in China. Hey there. Continue to love the show and look forward to new episodes. And this is from Yakov Nimoy. The longer the better. Though there's been a while since I've sent you folks an unsolicited piece of my mind, though I'd fill in a few gaps on the Chinese market for you and why there are long wheelbase versions of compact sedans that Americans don't buy anymore. Key to the market is that cars cost effectively twice as much in absolute cost compared to the U.S. China may have a larger market for cars overall, but owning a compact sports sedan like a BMW 3 Series or even Audi A3 is already considered a minor status symbol. For someone who has made it in a minor way, this could very well be the family car. That driver may not be able to afford a chauffeur all the time, but certainly hires one now and then. Even when they are doing the driving, you often have full-size adults such as your parents in the back. All those things factor in before even considering the cost of fuel and the size of some of the older streets you may find yourself driving down. When I drove my brother-in-law's 535 IL down the wrong alley a couple of years ago, I discovered that it just barely fit with about 2 inches of clearance on either side and had to creep along at about a mile an hour, waiting for pedestrians to slowly walk down the street too. Unfortunately, ultimately, you may see just as many premium and luxury cars on the road in China as you do here in the U.S., especially compared to the San Francisco Bay Area where we live. But there is far more tiering of cars as status symbols compared to anywhere else in the world. The implicit expectation there culturally for anyone in the middle class who is interested in getting married is to have a car and a house, so the details matter a lot. P.S. I love the special edition Rebecca has become to the show. It feels like the three of you really have gelled together as good complementary hosts. Especially love the perspective she brings to all sorts of vehicles that get me to rethink my American male-centric point of view of cars. The show has some amazing give and take dynamics that make you feel like one could just jump into the conversation. And I don't think you folks need to worry at all about that anyone talks over her. You can really sense the deep respect that you all have for each other. And we do have enormous respect for Rebecca. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Nimoy. That's so sweet of you. And believe me, nobody talks over me because I'm mean, small and mean.
We needed to have somebody who knows what they're talking about on the show. So
okay.
No, that's very, very sweet. That means a lot more than you know. Thank you.
Let's get one more before we wrap it up here. From Peter Fagel. Hello. Years and years ago, your answer to most questions was Honda Fit, and then years and years ago, it was Honda Fit. Years and years ago, it was Miata. Years ago, it was GTI. Now it's Telluride Palisade. What will it be tomorrow? Greetings from my wife, who enjoys your envy about her VW T5. For those who don't know, the T5, I believe, is the latest edition of the transporter, the van, the microbus. Peter from Bavaria, Germany. So, what will it be tomorrow after Telluride and Palisade?
Lucid Air.
It's funny because the next question I ask is like, what are you doing with it? And we recommend those cars a lot because they're pretty versatile. And I guess a lot of the people I'm talking to are, they have a similar set of needs than I do. Where we've got to move the family and the dogs and the stuff and all around. So there's ringers in every segment, and there's not really that many cars anymore on the market, or vehicles overall. Like there's a lot less choice than there used to be. So I don't know. The next answer, Corvette, $60,000. I mean, come on. Look at that thing.
Can't go wrong with that. That's true.
No,
it looks like a McLaren, and it goes like stink. I mean, come on.
Well, I think to his point, when we think back, I never know when the Honda Fit was an appropriate answer, but that's a different thing. But so
it was always an appropriate answer if what you were looking for was a reasonably affordable small car that was fun to drive.
Okay. So
and had tons and tons of room. It was
GTI
bigger on the
is
inside.
a better answer. But so I think,
but it's also more expensive.
Yes, of course it is. But I think that to his point, it's this idea of where is mobility going, right? Where are we moving as a culture? And I've said it before, and I feel like I've said that numerous times on this show today. But people migrate towards convenience. They migrate towards a better solution than what they have today. And one of the interesting and fascinating parts of the market right now is that we do have a very diverse marketplace, unlike we've had for a long time. So you do have people that look at things like Uber and Lyft as a more convenient, viable solution to owning a vehicle. And that's a harder discussion to have with people that are in their 60s and 70s and don't live in an urban environment. But what's fascinating now is because of the pandemic, is that still the case for people? Or has a core value of safety and security and feeling like you're not going to get a disease from the last person that sat in that seat does that overcome, does that trump the convenience part of it? So now is suddenly buying something like the Honda Fit or a smaller vehicle for your urban mobility needs a better solution? We don't know that yet because we're still in the midst of everything. So I think it's a great question. I think it's really fascinating to look at.
Yeah. It's big fortresses. So the Tahoe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, in general, there, aside from the Miata, there is no silver bullet that, answers every question. But
Miata with the trailer hitch.
I think, more having diversity in the marketplace, I think is great. I think that, I guess I would say the one thing that is likely to be part of that answer tomorrow is electrification, to some degree, whether that's, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or battery electric. That will almost certainly be part of the equation for whatever we end up choosing. And, near term, it'll probably be something like electric crossovers, so something like a CRV, RAV4, Escape, but that's electric, and, in a couple of weeks, we're going to see the new VW ID4, which is going to go into production here next year, and it'll be available here in the U.S. next year. Their first MEB platform vehicle here. Audi's got the Q4 e-tron, which is on that same platform. We're going to see stuff from Hyundai and Kia and many other manufacturers that is electric. That those vehicles are going to get more affordable. As we keep going forward, and so I think that's the one thing I can say almost with certainty is that electrification will be part of whatever the answer is.
Yes, and not only affordable, but more convenient.
Yes,
a better replacement for your internal combustion engine.
Something that requires fewer lifestyle compromises to use it as a day-to-day.
Yeah, perceived or otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I mean, keep listening and then tell us in a couple of years whether we were accurate.
Exactly.
All right. Well, on that note, it's 2 hours of show. So the longer the better. There you go.
Build that.
Yeah. So I think we're good to wrap up. Thanks for listening, everybody. Just keep the emails and comments rolling in, and we'll talk to you next time.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.